So glad to get out of that dang time travel machine.
Where'd you go?
I went back to the 80s to grab some of that good sports merch from my favorite defunct franchises. I spent my life savings on that machine.
You bought a time travel machine to buy sports merchandise.
Yeah, gladly.
You know you could have gone to 503 Sports, right? The website?
Yeah, no, I didn't think of that at all.
Yeah, they sell all sorts of throwback sports merch from leagues like the World Football League, XFL, UFL, and the Arena Football League, several others.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, they sell hats, shirts, even custom jerseys from all sorts of vintage sports teams.
Oh, man, I spent like a lot of money on that time travel machine.
Well, look, listeners of AFL Rewind get 10% off their first order by using the promo code ARENAFAN at checkout. That might help you out.
Yeah, it does.
Go on over to 503-sports.com and get your merch today.
Do you know anyone who wants to buy like a overpriced time travel machine?
No, sorry, I don't.
Welcome to AFL Rewind, a look back at all things arena football, sponsored by Phenom Elite. I'm your host, Tim Capper. Well, just recently, the YouTube channel Arena Football TV posted what many consider to be the grail of all grail games in AFL history, the showcase game. We began to think about who we could get to talk to that had not only some history within that game itself, but also went on to have a great career in the Arena Football League. Because you have to admit, if you go back and you think of who played in that game or who coached in that game, there are a very select few who had what you would consider a memorable AFL career. Well, we were lucky enough to be able to find just one of those people who was not only a player in the showcase game, but also is a very well-known name in the coaching ranks within the league itself. We are lucky enough to speak with this episode, Steve Thonn. So with us on the podcast this episode is a head coach. If you follow the Arena Football League, you knew who this was. He was very well. If you were a fan, you loved him. I mean, you really did. I mean, he wasn't been considered a lifer in the AFL, but he was very, very close to being one. With us now, we are speaking with Coach Steve Thonn. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Tim, great to be here. Yes.
As you and I talked back and forth via email before we got this thing set up, and we both of us mentioned that recently the YouTube channel put out the actual showcase game for the first time for many AFL fans. And I know this is one thing I want to talk to you about, but was that the very first time that you had gotten involved in arena football, or had you known about it prior to playing in the showcase game?
You know, when I look back at it, I think I knew a little bit just because, obviously, with Jim Foster starting everything, and it really started pretty much in the Chicago area with the Rockford game that was before that. So I knew a little bit about it, and I think the Rockford game kind of probably spiked my interest a little bit. And then just finding out that they were doing the showcase game, and at that time, I was playing semi-pro football. There was a real good semi-pro football league here in the Chicago area at that time, and Gene Nudo, we can get into it a little bit more, but he was one of the coaches. And a couple of the players that I played with in college were playing for a team called the DuPage Eagles.
Okay.
And they kind of talked me into playing one year, so that was 1987. So all that was kind of going on at the same time. There was the Rockford game. I kind of heard about arena football, and then just a lot going on with the semi-pro kind of league at that time. So can't remember exactly if I knew more about the showcase game or it all kind of happened pretty much at the same time.
Was it now? Are you able to tell us about how the teams were actually picked? How did you get chosen to play in the showcase game? I mean, like with the test game, it was two minor league teams or semi-pro teams. It wasn't this. It wasn't this. It wasn't in the same case, was it?
No, it really what happened. And again, I don't know. I can't remember everything.
That's
I
okay.
do remember that. The one team, the Chicago Bruisers, was basically Gene Nudo's River Grove Cowboys team.
Okay.
He had a semi-pro team, and they were very good. I think they won national championship or whatever it was called back then, but I think they won it once or twice. So his team, the River Grove Cowboys, was pretty much the Chicago Bruisers. I think they added a few guys to that team, but that was his team. So our team was really for the most part, it was a bunch of local guys, other semi-pro football players. Some, like I said, some of us from the DuPage Eagles, to some other local. It was really Chicago area talent that was around. So I'm not exactly sure how we got put together, but we got put together I remember us practicing for 2 weekends in a row before that game at the Rosemont Horizon. But really, we were called the Miami Vice. We had Iowa Hawkeye uniforms, and then we were all Chicago guys for the most part. So it was kind of a different thing.
Yeah, for sure. And if anybody happened to watch it recently on YouTube, they'll know that you did catch a pass in that game, and you guys also won on that last second touchdown. So it was, for a team that was put together really at the last moment, you guys did pretty good considering.
Yeah, we did. We were, I remember practicing, I can't remember where we practiced it, maybe one of the Morton high schools. But I think we practiced there, like I said, 2 weekends in a row, put together an offense. That's the first time I've seen that game. I saw it myself about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. And, that's the first time I've ever seen it. So it was kind of fun to watch. Obviously the game was pretty different.
Oh yeah.
With 4 linemen in some circumstances, we had 2 running backs a lot. But you could tell it was, as the game went on, I think there became a little bit more at the beginning, everything was a run. And then as the game kind of went on, there was a little bit more passing, a little bit, opened it up a little bit more. But it was fun. All I remember was we didn't know if anybody was going to show up that night. And I think 9,000 people showed up at the Horizon, and they were into it. And it was just a lot of fun. We had a great time playing, and with the crowd getting into it like that, not really knowing who we were. They actually thought we were from Miami. So it was, it was just a lot of fun. It was a great night.
How easy was it for you to get used to this game? Because I've asked, the others that have been on the podcast before who have played, was it easy to get used to the game itself, or was there a learning curve for you?
For me, since I was in it from the beginning there, it was pretty easy. And I was a receiver, so it's a receiver throwing league. So as a receiver, we loved it right from day one. Just kind of, even though the parameters of the field and everything was smaller, at that time, everything was pretty much man-to-man coverage. Right. So there wasn't really a lot of zone back then. So you really had a great time just going out there and running routes and catching the ball. So it really, I've said this, I think it's pretty true for the 30 years of arena football, that as a receiver, it was always a pretty easy adjustment for everybody, just because you had a little more freedom in your routes. In the outdoor game, I don't think you have as much freedom. We had a little bit more freedom of when we could make our cut, double moves, all that kind of thing. So, it was just a great sport to be a part of.
And obviously things got different, years down the line where the yo-yo motion was actually added in, because if anybody who watched any of the early games, from '87, they'll notice there's no real motion by the wide receivers.
No one did the motion back then. I saw it as I was watching the game, like I said a couple weeks ago. It was a lot of the outdoor motion, the basically going the quick zap motions, that type of thing, but nothing with the high motion and the yo-yo motions where you were, getting that full head of steam going at the line of scrimmage.
So obviously the league itself started off with their test season, or their showcase season back in '87. But you only really got involved in 1988 with Chicago. Did you want to play in '87, or did you have some other things that you had to do before you decided to become an AFL?
Right, that's a great question, because I wanted to play. We all thought, at least I thought, maybe I was wrong, I thought everyone that was in that game was going to get invited to training camp. And actually training camp that first year, was at Wheaton College, and I played at Wheaton College.
Yeah.
So when I didn't get invited to training camp, I was kind of wondering. I think I talked to Gino and just said, "Hey, what's up?" And he goes, "I'm not quite sure." And I went and watched practice a couple times at Wheaton, but I didn't play that year. I actually thought I was going to play that year, but I didn't. And then going into the next year, then 1988, there was another. I think there was another open tryout. I think at Triton College They had an open tryout, and I wasn't a great tester kind of guy, so I was kind of almost ready to give up on it. And I went to that, and actually after that, that tryout there, I got signed to go down to Florida for the next training camp.
Yeah.
And then I made the Bruisers team in '88.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that was the year, 88 was the year of the triple header, if I'm not mistaken, in preseason down in...
yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was down in Daytona.
Yeah.
So what happened was, for me, I didn't know if I was going to make the arena team. So I was, we were down there for 2 weeks. Wasn't sure I was going to make the team or not. And we all had a triple header. Like you said, we were the last game we were playing Detroit. And at practice one day, Don Nelson, who is the president of the Mavs, came up to me. We played basketball in college together at Wheaton. So he was down there for, back then it was called the Portsmouth Invitational or something like that. It was like their kind of recruiting back then for college players. He said, "Hey, do you want to come over?" So I went to Perry Moss one night and said, "Do you mind if I go miss meetings tonight? I have a chance to maybe scout for Golden State in the NBA." He goes, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." Well, at that time, I didn't know they were probably getting rid of me. So that's why he said, "Go ahead."
Oh.
So I went to that night, and I came back, and I think a couple days later we were in Daytona, and I don't think I got in till like the fourth quarter. So I think I'm not sure I was going to make the team, and I got in, and I think I caught 2 or 3 passes, and I do remember tackling Alvin Reddick, which was pretty big for me at that time, just because Alvin was about 230 and I was about 165. So, but I had a good fourth quarter, and then I made the team coming back. So. And you
had a pretty good year considering what the stats were for early arena football. I mean, 21 receptions, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and obviously the Bruisers had an amazing season that year at 10-1-1. Did you feel that the team that you were on that year 10-1-1? Yes, you didn't win the Arena Bowl you lost it to Detroit, but. Right. What was your thought on your Bruisers team that year? As you said, it was coached by Coach Perry Moss, and your quarterback was Ben Bennett. So,
right, it turned out to be a great year. I think coming back, even Coach Moss said, hey, even though in that game down at Daytona, I think Detroit took it to us pretty good. He pretty much stayed with us. I mean, we all went back up to Chicago and started the next week for the first game, and. It really turned out to be a great team, and we had a lot of good players on that team. And I tell people today, guys like Durwood Rockmore, I still think Rock is probably the best DB. I mean, people don't even remember him that much, but he's probably the best DB that ever played. Just the way he could anticipate and cover ground and that type of thing. And then I learned so much from Reggie Smith. I mean, Reggie was a great little receiver, and just the way he ran routes, and he kind of taught me how to make cuts, and then just having Ben thrown to us. But it was great. I mean, I learned a lot that year. I got hurt a little bit. I pulled my hamstring a couple times, so I missed a couple games. But it was a great season. It was a lot. It was one of the most fun seasons I ever had. I mean, the guys on that team were pretty funny. So it was just overall, it was a great first season and a great experience.
What was it like for the turf? Everybody who's seen the TV at the games at that time, the turf between then and what it was back in 2019, completely different. I'm guessing you may, being a wide receiver, you may not have been a fan too much of what the turf was in that day.
The turf was not good. I mean, it was bad. It was hard. They said they put a cushion under it. All the turfs were. I don't know if all of them, but I think a lot of them were bought from outdoor fields. So I think I think one of the turfs, I don't know if we had it or somebody had one turf that was at the Cotton Bowl that they just took off. So all the turfs that they put in were mostly outdoor, the old style turf that was pretty hard. So, like I said, some put more cushion than others under them. Some didn't have that much cushion. So it was every arena was a little different, and yeah, they were not like the turf that these guys had the last 10, 15 years, that's for sure.
What happened in, obviously you come off of an Arena Bowl loss, but you don't play in 89. What did you do in 89?
I actually did play in 89.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so 89 was, the league folded, and then they had a 4-game season with basically all road games to try to get interest again.
Yes.
So I talked to, and I can't think of his name right now. He kind of did personnel for the whole league. And I had a big family reunion vacation planned that year down in North Carolina. And I really, I had a young daughter. I didn't want to miss it. So I said, hey, I'm not sure if I want to do arena again because wasn't quite sure. We were all, I think, training camp was at Rensselaer that year.
Yes.
At St. Joe's.
Yep.
And so, anyways, I went to North Carolina, and the last couple of days, I just talked to my wife. I said, hey, if they need somebody, I'm going to go play. So I called up. I think his name was Mac Lewis. I think that was his name. So I gave him a call and I said, hey, if you need anybody the last 2 games, I'm done with vacation here, I can play. Well, I guess that night a DB got hurt out in Sacramento. A Chicago DB got hurt. So he called me the next day and said, hey, can you make it to Cincinnati? I said, sure, no problem. So I met the team in Cincinnati. We were going to play the Washington Commandos. And I actually found that game on YouTube too. I haven't seen that. I've never seen that game. So I found that a couple weeks ago. And so I met the team down there, and I was actually the defensive specialist that year, believe it or not. So they needed a DB, and so I played defensive specialist there. Then we got in a bus right after that game. We beat Washington, and we got in a bus, and we drove down to Atlanta and played Denver. And I think we beat them. I don't know if we beat them or not. It was a close game. And then we had a playoff game up in Detroit, and we lost that game to Detroit. So I did play 3 games that year as a defensive specialist.
Okay, for the Bruisers again. Okay, that's
for the Bruisers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
80. The league gets a little bit more stable. Obviously, something seemed to have worked with the barnstorming season that they called 1989. How did you get involved with the expansion Albany Firebirds and Coach Rick Buffington?
They got my rights. So somehow, I don't think it was really a draft back then, but I think they got my rights. And if the Chicago Bruisers were done, so
yeah,
I think Reggie Smith, myself, Durwood Rockmore, might have been 1 or 2 others. They got our rights to go to Albany. And at that time, I was thinking about not playing anymore just because I wasn't sure where the league was going. And when it got closer to it, I thought, hey, I think it was an 8-game season that year, and I said, hey, it's 8 games. I'll be out there for a little over 2 months, and I'll be back home. So I decided to go out there and play in '90. So that's kind of how I got started in Albany.
Okay. What was it like being on a true expansion team that year? I mean, Coach Buffington's made a name for himself,
sure,
obviously in the AFL, but what was it like being on an expansion club?
It was great. You could tell we were all kind of starting new again. There was a lot of new teams that year. Everyone was starting, even though I had been playing for 2 years. It was like a new league almost going into it. And it was great. And just being in Albany, I mean, everyone knows what Albany was like. And, and again, 1990 wasn't quite, where it got to in the later 90s and where, the couple years ago where it was. But you could just tell Albany was a great fan base. They loved the game from day one. And they just kind of took us in. So it was a great, going out to Albany, even that first year was a great experience.
I mean, not only did you do a league first when you were in Chicago your first year with the first ever league tie, your first ever game with the Albany Firebirds, you guys set the league record for lowest total points in a game. So it's you. I mean, you started off slow, but I remember seeing a game too on YouTube. It was not the same. I mean, being called the New York Firebirds. I heard the whole story about that one.
Sure.
It was totally different. No, nothing in the end zones that year. It was really, really weird. But as you said, it was the catalyst of what was going to become the Albany Firebirds that we knew up until the year 2000. So.
Yeah, it really was. We started off. I mean, obviously that first game. I don't remember specifics, but whatever the score was, we didn't score. I think we got booed some too in Albany there. So
yeah,
it was. But we got better as that year went on. I think, I remember every single game getting better. I think we kind of, figured it out, who was playing kind of offensively, defensively, what we're going to do. So I do remember that, by week 5, 6, 7, 8, it was a much different team than it was that first week when we were out there.
Yeah. What was it like for your next couple of years in Albany? In 91 through 93, through the rest of your playing career, it was you, same Coach Buffington. But what do you remember from your time in Albany after that?
I think the biggest thing is that the Coach Owensy came in the next year as our OC. Yeah. So having Mike coming in, and then Mike Daly came with him. So Buff got two, real good coaches that came on his staff. And I think Owensy was great for me. Mike was pretty innovative back at that time, putting in new formations. He started really, kind of dealing with all the stuff you can do in arena football. He was trying to figure it all out, and he just came up with great stuff back then. So Mike was pretty innovative, and me, kind of as a receiver, I loved all that stuff, kind of, I don't know if trickery is the word, but just coming up with new stuff every week. So I really enjoyed being out there and playing for Owensy and just kind of learning from him and all the stuff he did. And again, when I started coaching, a lot of the stuff that I took was from Mike.
Yeah.
But that's what I remember, just being out there. Owensy, we had, I think 91. I got hurt right away in 91. I went out there and I had a real good first game, and then I tore my PCL, so I couldn't play the rest of the year. And then coming back in 92, I played, and then 93 I played. I knew I was kind of dying down, that, hey, I'm going to be done here. So I started thinking about coaching in the league and started talking to Owensy and Buffington and everything about, hey, I think I want to start coaching.
Yeah.
After this. I'm kind of tired of getting beat up here. So, but like I said, every year the fans were better. It's just, Albany was just a great place to be. And like I said, I kind of fit in with where let's say Owensy fit me in, where I could have some success being a receiver. So it was a lot of fun those 3 years.
And you played with some pretty good players, obviously too. The great Freddie Gales was one of your teammates, Darrell Hammond. He played with the great Tom Porras. And Gary Gussman. You played with a lot of players that are considered stars in the early days of the league.
Yeah, Tom Porras was a very good quarterback. If Tom would have had the career that, the Radabaws and all those type of guys that played arena football for 8, 9, 10 years, Tom was that type of quarterback. Mm-hmm. He fit, and his touch on the ball and his accuracy. I love playing for Tom, or, having him as a quarterback. Yeah. And like you said, Freddie Gales, Darrell Hammond, Eric Hoskins, Myron Jefferson. I had a blast playing with all those guys. We really did get along pretty good out there. And I think that was part of Albany, that, every year I was out there, the teams really got along well. We interacted really good, and we did a lot of stuff together. So it was great. And you said Gary Gussman, He's still one of my best friends today. So, it was a great time to, like I said, just to be out there for those 3 years and playing football.
So you said at the end of 93, you felt that you were just completely done. You're too beat up, and you wanted to go ahead and make the switch over to coaching, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. And in 94, you just happened to catch on also with the Albany Firebirds as their wide receiver special teams coach. Was it your first offer as a head coach that you were given, or were some other team? Were you looking at some other teams?
You know what? It was. At that time, I thought, well, let's put it this way. Coming out of college, I always thought I'd be a basketball coach.
Okay.
So I never thought I was going to coach football. So at that time, when I was playing football, I was coaching basketball in the arena football off season.
Okay.
So I was coaching back here at Wheaton College, and I was in college coaching. And so I really, really thought I was going to be a basketball coach. And that 92, kind of around that 92, 93, I was looking at high school jobs. I was looking at small college jobs, and just everything. I just couldn't get anything. I mean, every interview I went to, everything was just falling through. So Hohensie took over the Firebirds in 94, and I remember calling Mike and just saying, hey, I'm looking to coach. I don't know if you need anybody, this and that. And he called back and said, hey, I don't have a lot of money, but I have a spot for you. I'd love to have you as receivers and help with special teams and kind of get your foot in the door. And so I jumped at it. Nothing else was happening basketball-wise, so I kind of jumped at the arena football, and obviously it turned out to be a pretty good decision.
Yeah, exactly. Is it fair to say, Coach, that, and I think a lot of players and coaches may have said this, and it may depending on even where anybody can work today. Do you find that it was not necessarily what you knew at the time, but it was who you knew that got you the job?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way it is in a lot of circumstances. I think a lot of coaching it's kind of who you know, and then once you get in, it's what you know.
Yeah.
And you have to show that you do know something. And again, Hohensie knew me. Mike Daly was still on the staff, so Mike knew me. So it was a pretty easy transition, even though I had just played the year before, and I was coaching, a lot of the guys that I just played with. It was a pretty easy transition, and Mike gave me, he was good at just, hey, the receivers are yours, kind of take them. And again, I don't want to say I had a lot of input, but he would give, he'd ask for my ideas on offense and just routes and that type of thing. So I really felt like not only did I learn a lot, but I felt like as a first year kind of coach that I felt like I was kind of given a lot to really, get ready to, hey, if I become an offensive coordinator, if I become this, I'm going to be ready. So I think Hohensie and Daly gave me a lot of info there to get me ready.
Yeah, sure. And obviously, being wide receivers coach, it obviously, I'm sure it helped just a little bit having a guy named Eddie Brown on your roster, right?
Eddie was pretty good. None of us knew how good Eddie was going to be, so I think I picked Eddie up at the airport. And Eddie didn't talk much back. Well, Eddie talks a lot, but Eddie didn't talk much. And I'm bringing him back in the van, and he wasn't saying too much. Hello?
Hey, Coach, that was just weird.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, I don't know. No, I don't think it was your fault. I think Skype just died. So,
Oh, okay.
Today's technology.
So where was I?
You were saying you just pick up Eddie from the. You picked him up at the airport. Eddie doesn't really. He talks now, but at that time, he really wasn't saying much.
Yeah, he wasn't saying too much. I think Eddie was just trying to figure out, what am I doing here in Albany? What's going on here? But, and again, we couldn't tell right away in practice how good he was, but our first preseason game or scrimmage, you could tell right away just how good his hands were, how he had just attacked the ball, and just how he got open all the time.
Yeah.
So you could tell pretty fast. And then I think the first game he had 4 touchdowns. The second game he had 4 touchdowns. The third game it just, he just went off right away. So, it was pretty fun to see Eddie Brown have his start. So,
was it a matter of Eddie getting used to the game, or was it a difference between what coaching him about the game itself and also having Mike Perez as his quarterback?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Like I said, I think it's easier for receivers to get used to the game a lot quicker, just because it's a passing game. I think Hohensie helped, just kind of highlighting Eddie right away. Mike Perez helped, Mike being so good. So I think it was just a little combination of everything, and making Eddie our OS right away. So So it was pretty impressive. Just, at first I wasn't even sure. I'm watching this guy do it, for 3-4 games. And, whenever a new guy comes in the league, you're not quite sure, how good he is. But yeah, it was pretty impressive watching him in those first few games.
Yeah. Guys did very well that year. You went 10-2, and it seems like it was the early thing on with Albany and Arizona. I remember that game because I was there, Coach, and I remember how that game ended, and I was not happy. I can only imagine what it was like on your end of the field, because if I remember correctly, it was the disputed call or disputed possible PI that wasn't called. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember what it was, but I remember leaving that game not too pleased. Having Arizona knock off Albany at home.
Yeah, and it was just it was kind of a frustrating game. They came in and I remember it was low scoring, and we weren't used to that.
Yeah.
I don't think Arizona was used to that either. I think it was a little low scoring, and like you said, I think I don't remember that much of it, but I know there was just some controversy at the end there on the fourth down or whatever it was on the pass. So, but it was a tough one just because it was one of those years where. We had a lot of success. Mm-hmm. We were riding high. We had a home playoff game, so to end it like that, it's always a tough situation.
For sure. Now, what led to you leaving the Firebirds and then joining your second expansion club, but your first as a coach, to the Connecticut Coyotes, and with a head coach you had been under before too, with Rick Buffington.
Yeah, I was all planning on going back to Albany, and then Connecticut came in the league, and Buff got the job, and Buff called me, and it wasn't like I was on. It was really, for me, it was just a step up where now I could be, after 1 year, I had a chance to be an offense coordinator already, and go call plays. So it was just an opportunity that I just didn't think I could miss. So, joining with Buff in Connecticut and being able to be the OC, was just a great opportunity for me. So, but yeah, that's the reason I took off or left and went to Connecticut.
How was your experience this time around actually building an expansion club versus playing on an expansion club as you did a few years prior?
Yeah, it was tough. We did have some veteran players. I don't know if it was an expansion draft or how we got, but we did have some vets on the team. But it was a new team. I remember in training camp, there was a lot of teaching going on, just teaching everyone how to play the game. Remember, we had Tyrone Thurman, mm-hmm. we had Clemente Gordon, we had a couple. Mike Hold was our quarterback. We did have some vets, but it's kind of a big switch trying to get everybody ready for the arena season. So, and then for me, being the first year and installing an offense, it was pretty much, like I said, it was what Hohensee did because that's what I knew.
Right.
So just kind of putting everything together. And again, in arena, you only have 2 weeks, so you got to hurry up and get it in.
Yeah.
So I just remember just trying to hurry up and get everything in and be ready for that first game.
Is that the first time you'd actually written your own playbook, or had you dabbled in it prior to that?
Really, it was the first time I did it. And I used a lot of the same terminology that we had in Albany. I changed a few things around just to kind of make it mine, but it was really pretty much the same terminology that I had learned. So that wasn't that hard. It was just getting everybody in their spots and just knowing what they're doing.
Yeah. Obviously, having only a 1-win season as your first season as OC is, I'm sure you weren't very happy with, but were you able to take away anything positive from that season?
It was tough. I remember we started off pretty good. We lost 2 close games right off the bat. And then we lost Mike. I think Mike got hurt in the 3rd game hold. And I think Clemente had a couple of good games. Then I think we lost Clemente for a while. So it was just one of those years where we were an expansion team. A lot of rookies were playing by the end. I think we suffered a little bit on the O-line and D-line. We just weren't quite strong enough to stay with all the good teams that were in the league at that time.
Yeah.
So it was tough, but it was good just being able to go through the whole season and call an offense for the whole season.
How did you end up heading over to Milwaukee the next season?
I think Connecticut made the change. I think Sperduto came in. I was just talking with Mike Trigg. Mike Trigg and I had known each other. It was close. I wanted to stay in the league. I didn't want to get out of the league. So, I remember calling Trigg and just saying, hey, what are you guys looking for? Do you need anything? And Mike was great. Trigg was great. He called the offense, but again, it was one of those situations where I was able to do a lot with the receivers, do a lot with the special teams, and just kind of learn. Now I learned from Trigg, who was more from the Detroit Drive kind of that era,
that school,
that school.
Yeah.
So to learn kind of how he had learned things from Tim Markham, and so it was good for. It actually turned out great for me just because I got to learn kind of from another person who had been involved in arena football from day one with Markham. So it was good.
And you had a good year. I mean, you guys went 10-4 that year. It's funny, your old team came back to bite you guys in the playoffs itself, but you're knocked off in the semis. I think it was to Albany, but
right.
You guys had some very good players on the team. I mean, the lifer himself, Todd Hamill,
right,
and a guy who, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the year where you had another quarterback who ended up being very successful in his career and only joined the team for the first time to start his career in an exhibition in Europe. I think you know who I'm talking about, Coach. Clint Dozell. He's some guy. I mean, but what was it? What were your thoughts on?
Well, you know what we did? We had a lot of talent up there. I mean, it was a loaded team. I mean, there was a lot of good players, just talent wise. And I didn't know who Clint was going up there, and I got to know Clint. Obviously, he was up there from Texas.
Yeah.
So the one thing we started doing right away was, I remember we started playing golf. I didn't know he was a golfer. He didn't know I was. So we just started playing golf some. And that's probably how I got to know Clint the most, just out on the golf course. And right away, the one thing with Clint, you could tell in practice every day, being behind Hamill. I mean, he took practice. He wanted to beat everybody in practice. And the same thing on the golf course. I mean, he did not want to lose. And I know people have said that about Clint kind of his whole career, but that was the thing that, I found out pretty quick that, man, this guy, not only is a pretty good quarterback, he gets the game, he's tough, but he don't want to lose at anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, but Todd had a great year that year too. And Todd had been a veteran in the league, and Clint played his role well that year, but you could just tell that, after that year, Clint was going to be ready to go somewhere and be a quarterback.
And it's funny you mentioned that. Obviously, we'll jump to 98 here in a couple of minutes. What did you end up doing in 97?
97, I actually went down Texas. The Texas job opened up.
Okay.
So I think 6 of us went down and interviewed, and Dave Ewert got the job. Dave was the assistant coach at St. Louis at the time, and Dave asked me to be his offense coordinator. So I went down to Houston, and I was the offense coordinator the second year of the actual Texas Terror. And that's when we brought in Clint, and he actually brought in Marty Lowe, who was kind of a backup from John Caleo at St. Louis, because he knew Marty, and then I knew Clint, obviously, from Milwaukee. So those were our two quarterbacks that year going into training camp.
Okay. So you had a little history with the actual Texas Terror then.
Yeah, I was there in 97. I was the OC for Texas Terror.
Okay.
Yep.
What were I've asked Coach Dozell this question already since we interviewed him quite a while back for the podcast. I want to know your thoughts on this too. You go from being the Texas Terror to the Houston Thunder Bears. I think you know what question I'm going to ask you. What were your thoughts? Is it for you? Is it just the team itself? Does your team name really matter to you as a head coach, or does when you hear something like this going from Texas Terror to the Houston Thunder Bears? What were your thoughts?
Well, I think the big thing back then was they wanted to. I became the head coach after that first year down there, and they wanted to change the name. I think to make it more of a Houston. This is a Houston team.
Right.
So, which made sense back then. And so I was actually down there myself, and I don't know, we probably had 6 or 7 players for the unveiling, and I didn't even know what it was at that time. They wouldn't even tell me. So we get to, whatever the restaurant bar was, and they had a big logo up they had covered, and they unveiled it. And I remember some of the players just kind of looking at me, and I kind of looked back at them, and I said, all right, it's the Thunder Bears. So I think it turned out to be a great name. I really did.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was kind of looking at like Thunder Bears, what is this? But really, and the uniforms actually turned out pretty cool.
Yeah, they were nice.
So, in the long run, I think it turned out to be a good name. But when you're just hit with the name, you're kind of going, okay. But it turned out to be good.
Now, for you as a coach, does it really matter to you though, or do you find that it helps? But wherever you are, it helps with the community, obviously. But for you, does it really matter?
It helped with I think just becoming Houston definitely helped down there, just to give it more of a identity of where the team was and who we were. So I think that was a great idea.
Okay. Obviously, I mean, you did well in '98. The last 3 years as being a head coach there in Houston weren't so good. But I want to ask you specifically about 98, 99, 2000, because 2001, as I know is a completely different story for you. What were your thoughts on the team from 98 to 2000? How did you go from an 8-6 team to a 3-11 team in 2000?
All right. Well, we knew we had some good talent coming back in 98, and with Clint at quarterback, and we knew we had some good receivers. Terry Gray was doing personnel back then for me, and he did a good job of finding guys. So we knew we had a lot of good players coming back. So we thought, hey, this, we should play pretty well this year.
Right.
So it kind of I think we were disappointed a little bit. I thought we'd even be a little bit better, but it was great just kind of turning the whole, turning everything around and going to the playoffs and that type of thing. I think it was great. It was great for the city. It was great for the guys. I mean, it was a good year. It was a fun year. Clint was able to show how good he was going to become. So everything just kind of fit that year. So it was a good year.
Right.
Then 99, I can tell 99, what happened was, we thought everyone was coming back and this and that. We were going into training camp. There was a new league that started down there. I don't know if you remember that. There was an outdoor league that started in, I believe it was 1999. And all the guys basically said they were coming back and this and that. Well, I lost like 7, 8 players to the Texas team.
Okay.
And so, I thought I had the whole team coming back there in March for training camp, and all of a sudden we're going in the year and we're trying to find players just so we could have training camp.
Was this an indoor league, Coach, or was this outdoor?
It was an outdoor league back then. I can't think of the name of it right now. But Carlos Fowler and Daryl, all my linemen that were pretty good, all went to that league. I'm pretty sure it was 99. I think I have the right year. I've been in this too long. But yeah, so anyways, we struggled a little bit that year. So everything changed a little bit. And then, Clint leaving, going to the Bears then, and, we just had quarterback changes and other stuff. So, but the first year was great, and it was just a lot of difficult situations the next couple of years.
Yeah. And it's funny, we were talking before about community and how good a name is for the community. In 2001, wow, I've heard Traveling Thunder Bears. I've heard many different nicknames for what your team was called that year. It wasn't necessarily Houston Thunder Bears.
Right.
How did you feel as a head coach who needs to basically rally your team together? And this may have been the perfect opportunity to do so. But wait, basically, you found out that you are going to be a barnstorming team for most of the year.
Yeah, I didn't find out until about a month before the season. So we're, sometime in February where I got the call from from the league and saying, "Hey, Alexander has let the team go. We're taking over the team, and you will not have any home games." So that's basically what I was told, and we're starting here in a month. So there really wasn't a lot of time to plan or prepare, that type of thing. And so I actually, what I did, I looked at bringing the team up here.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, if we're just going to travel, I checked into College DuPage, which is a real good junior college over here, and I was trying to say, hey, if we're going to travel, who cares where we're based? If we're the Houston Thunderbirds, it doesn't really matter. And everything, but we had everything set down there. We had new apartments already set for the guys. We had University of Houston. We had their practice. We had their game field and their indoor. So I said, hey, we have everything set up in Houston. Even though we're not going to have a home game, let's do everything in Houston. So, it was an experience. It was fun in a lot of ways because you did have to kind of bond and come together. You had to change the way you coach just because you had to give a lot more days off, a lot more film sessions just because everyone was tired. I mean, for the most part, you're flying or busing, every single week. So, I think our guys did a great job. They kind of embraced it. We ended at the beginning, we were like taking team pictures everywhere we went, on the field after the games and stuff like that. We ended up losing quite a few close games in a row, which hurt us. And then by the end of the year, we just started running out of gas. You could just kind of tell that it was getting tougher and tougher. But it, as bad as it was set up, it wasn't that bad of an experience. And it was a good group of guys too. So a lot of those guys that played that year kept playing for quite a few years on other teams. So it turned out to be pretty good that way. As we just, in the win-loss column, it was kind of tough to succeed.
Is it something that you're surprised? I'm guessing that from what you said a month prior that he basically tells the league, you're not going to have any home games. Were you surprised at that point that the league was allowing this to occur at this point? Do you know if the league tried to get another owner for the team before the season started?
I think they did try to get somebody. I think it was just at that time it was too late to keep it right there in Houston at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were going to take over. So I think them taking over was the easiest thing for them to do. I'm not quite sure what their thinking was. I'm guessing it was the easiest or best way to go about it. And then once they did that, then I thought, hey, let's just play. We played games everywhere. So we were kind of a guinea pig to get excitement in other cities. So we played in Madison, Wisconsin. We played in West Virginia. We played in Bismarck. We played in Fresno. We were just all over the country. And I think they were using us as, hey, we might get a good arena city out of one of these, if it looks good in the future. So I think that, it's probably best for the league to do that too. But like I said, it was just tough as a team and as players. It was really tough for 14 games to go on the road every week.
I can imagine, because you're basically living out of a hotel the entire year, even though the players may have had some different places to stay. But of those 4 different cities, Coach, where you were the quote unquote home team, Charleston, Madison, Bismarck, Lubbock. You forgot Lubbock, and I think West Valley City, Utah. What was the worst?
How about Utah? Utah was tough because we were the home team, and I remember, again, I don't know, they wanted to be the home team, like introductions and everything else. Mm-hmm. And I just said, no, we're the home team. So if we're the home team, Arizona's getting introduced first, we're second. They wanted to change everything around that night. So I remember the whole pregame, an hour and a half before, we're just arguing about who's technically we were the home team, but they wanted them to be the home team. So there's just a lot of stuff like that going on before the game, which made it difficult. When we were out in Fresno, Houston flooded, and 4 of us lost our cars.
No boy.
So when we got back that week, we're all dealing with insurance people, and my car was in a garage, and you could have about 1 foot from the ceiling was full of water. So University of Houston shut down. So we didn't practice the whole week before we went to Lubbock. So we had team meetings, and so we came back from Fresno and team meetings and watched some film, and then we got in a bus and went to Lubbock. So it was a tough situation.
I can imagine. I'm sure but as I said before, I think if it was the best situation, it brought you and the team closer together. Is that what you would take away from that horrible 2000 season?
I mean, and I credit the players that year. I mean, they were all pretty tight group, and we had a nice apartment complex that they were all at. So I remember the guys just doing a lot of stuff together. We tried to do some meals and, just get-togethers like that, just to keep everyone together. But as much as you try to do that, it's still tough to win football games.
Oh, I'm sure. I want to backtrack here for a second. I wanted to ask you the question, because we were talking about 99 before, and what fans need to remember too is that in 99, at one point, the league did say we're done, because this had the whole thing to do with it was the earliest time before a real union was about to start. The whole James Guidry thing was, the whole thing was going on then, the whole lawsuit. What was your thought as a head coach trying to bring in players and for the very first time having to deal with what was a first in the Arena League, but an official salary cap and free agents?
Yeah, it was tough back then, because we were, when the league, basically said they were done.
Yeah.
I think we all thought in the back of our mind as coaches, and I had talked to somebody that, we were hoping and we thought, hey, this will still come back here and we're going to play this year. But,
right.
but we weren't quite sure, how it was going to happen or when or what. And it actually, I think, happened pretty quick that we decided to play. But it was tough getting players and just being in Houston. And we had a big switch that year just with the, because Clint was gone that year.
Yep.
So Robert Hall became my quarterback that year, who had been my receiver the year before. One of the, a very good receiver too. So we just had a lot of changes. And then with the new, a lot of the CBA and the union stuff was getting big. There was a lot of changes with the salary cap. And then basically us coaches, I did my salary cap basically after every game in my apartment. So I'd go, I'd write down everything that the guys did. And hey, he's a $700 a game guy. He got $25 here for an interception. He got 2 pass breakups, give him another 50. I did everyone's payroll for about 2 or 3 hours the next day after after the game. So there was just a lot to it that year. And being in Houston, it just kind of made it a little tougher.
Yeah. Did it, besides being in Houston, were there a lot of challenges trying to recruit people? Because as you said, new salary cap, player X may want, you know what, coach, you want me to come play with you? I want this much. Were there any situations for you, coach, where you had to say money versus, not necessarily lesser talent, but money versus talent?
Sure. Well, we were, and if I remember right, we were a little lower on the scale. So it was, we had to, the good thing about it was that you could, I did have some money to give to guys like, say a Clint or something. I did have money. But then we also had to bring in a lot of rookies at base. So it was tough because I had a lot of guys that I really liked from the year before that you're trying to go, hey, I want, I'm offering them 800 or whatever, and they want 1,200. Well, back then that's a pretty big gap. So you're just trying to do a lot of negotiations and, hey, this is what I can give you. And, the good thing was, like I said, there's 4 or 5 guys that we definitely could give money to that would go, hey, at least I got some, I can compete and get them. But it was tough because I had a lot of guys that I wanted to keep on the team and try to keep them happy. So I remember just trying to work that cap quite a bit.
Yeah. It seemed, I guess, somewhat unfair that after 2001, you are not with the, everything you went through in 2001, you're not going to be with the Thunder Bears anymore. What were your thoughts in between the 2002 and 2003 seasons before you joined up with the Georgia Force?
I wasn't quite sure. I was under contract a little bit for Houston for a while.
Okay.
And then, the opportunities back then, there just weren't that many at that time. So I kind of waited till the next year to see what was, I went to a lot of games at Chicago at the Rosemont or Allstate Arena then.
Yeah.
I went to quite a few games that year just to watch, just because I hadn't really sat down and watched games. So I think it was good just to see, 5, 6, 7 games and just kind of watch it from a different perspective. So that was good. And then I was just hoping that, hey, there should be some opportunities in the next year. And then actually it was Dallas, not Georgia, but Dallas opened up in an OC. And I had talked to them a little bit before that. So this is kind of a natural fit that, I was able to, after that year, hook on with Dallas and go down there to a great organization.
Yeah. Obviously, you were very close to where you were the year prior. Technically, I mean, any much of an up change for leaving Houston and going to Dallas? I mean, obviously, a completely different team. Everybody knows the Desperados, but what was the difference between Houston and Dallas?
It was a lot different. Just in Houston, even though we were owned by an NBA team, we really us coaches did a lot of it. Not that the people didn't treat us well, but we did a lot of stuff, to make the football team go. In Dallas, I mean, the Cowboys did a lot for us. Mm-hmm. So it was a great situation. Just, I realized pretty quick, like, wow, this is a very professional organization. And Shai Anderson was running the team. It was the Joneses' son-in-law, and Shai was great. So it was just, it was kind of fun just to go into an organization like that and just see, not how well run it was, but just how they wanted to succeed in the arena too.
Yeah. So from Dallas, you ended up joining the Georgia Force. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was 2 years in Dallas, and then went up to Georgia in 2005.
Okay. What was it? What was your experience there with Georgia? You were the OC there also, but what was your experience being with the Georgia Force?
Yeah, that was great too. Just being owned by Arthur Blank, and we kind of like in Dallas, we had a lot of we used the Cowboys facilities quite a bit and that type of thing. Same thing in Atlanta. I mean, we were, they made us a part of the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, we had a locker room right there at their indoor practice facility. We used their weight room. They built meeting rooms. I mean, it was first class. It was the first time where I'd been with an arena team where they made stuff for us.
Wow.
So we kind of had our own little facility there at the Atlanta Falcons facility. So, and they treated us real well. So again, going 2 years in Dallas, which was great. And then right to that, which was great. They took care of us, and it was a good staff too, dealing with Doug Blank and Bob Cronenberg, who's still there now with the Falcons. And it was a good place to be.
Yeah. Did you find at the time that you were there that was what in your mind was successful as a OC?
Yeah, we had. I think it was pretty successful. Jim Kubiak was in his second year. I think he had come on the year before that, so they were excited about having Jim back. And Jim and I got along well. And Jim, he was just a good quarterback, and he always wanted to learn more and do more all the time. So it was fun working with Jim. It was just we we had a good team. Went to the first year. The big thing that helped us, we made a trade for Chris Jackson that year, and Chris came in, and Kubiak ended up getting hurt, but that's when Matt came in, Nagy, halfway through the year, and we went to the Arena Bowl. So it was 2005 was a fun year. So.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it's no matter how many times you end up going to the Arena Bowl, it doesn't matter. I mean, again, you come away with, unfortunately, a loss again. But I mean, do those things? I've asked players before. I've asked coaches before. Do any of these particular games stick with you through your entire history, or are you the type of coach who's able to just brush it off and say, "We'll go for 1-0 next time"?
You know what? They all hit you. Whenever you lose a game, you don't feel good about it. And it's like any other game. You go over every single play and every call. And, for a while there, you kind of second guess a lot of stuff you did that maybe you should have done something different. But I think that's true with any coach. And it hits you for a while, but they never really, stuck with me. I'm sure we'll talk about Cleveland. That one probably stuck with me a little bit longer. But they, it was a great game. They made a play at the end, and ended up kicking a field goal. It was a great game that year. Overall it was, I think when you look back at them all, you realize, hey, it was a pretty good year.
And I would say, Coach, I don't know if you will agree with this, but I mean, that was probably around the height of what NBC was. It was the first ever neutral site game for the Arena Bowl in Las Vegas. Were you at the time a proponent, or were you against having a neutral site championship?
I kind of liked the neutral site. Maybe it was because I wasn't in a lot of the other games when you had them at your, home or away. But I thought it was great for the league. I think at NBC at that time, they were doing good, a great job with our games and getting us out there. And so I think having a neutral site was good back then. I didn't really think that much about it, but I thought it was good for the league.
Do you find that with as I said, I know you're owned by an NFL owner, and some may look at that time of the league where there were some major changes made to the game itself, whether it had been through the Iron Man change or through some of the modifications to the rules. Did you ever have a say? Were you ever on a competition committee where you could say, well, I don't like this? Or was it something where it was where you had to basically, the decision was made and you had to zig to get yourself, make sure you had everything right for the next season? Sure.
I don't think I ever had, I had an opinion. I remember, just being, obviously when you're a head coach, you go to more of the head coaches meetings that we had back in the day, every year. So you'd have more of a say than assistant coaches. You kind of relay that through your head coach. But I kind of liked a lot of the changes back then. As much as I grew up with Ironman football, and I loved Ironman football, and I think it was a huge part of the arena game and helped make the arena game, I did not mind the change at all. Okay. Just because I think you were able to go after more players. We could actually get, actual offensive linemen. We could actually get, a DB or this type of player or that type of player. So you're able to, go after some different guys that, you couldn't really go after any offensive lineman that much at the beginning. It was like, hey, get yourself a center and then get your defensive lineman and teach them how to play offense. So I think it opened up the game a little bit. I don't think it, as a coach, I don't think it changed anything we did that much. I think it was fine. I think for, some of the purists or whatever, it changed the game a little bit. And like I said, I loved Ironman football, and I'm glad Arena football did that, but I did not mind the change either.
2008, you get your title back as head coach. You're going to coach for the Grand Rapids Rampage. How did that opportunity come to you?
I when I left Georgia, I wasn't sure where I was going to go, and I went to the Arena Bowl. I think it was in New Orleans that year, and I got a call from Greg Grand Rapids, and they wanted to talk to me. So I said, so I had a talk down there in New Orleans when we were down there for the Arena Bowl, and it went real well. And when I got back, they said, "Hey, you want to come on up?" And I said, "Yeah." But I had already, I don't know if people knew it, but I had already interviewed kind of for Grand Rapids twice. You know, when Cortez got the job, I had interviewed then, and then when Sparky got the job, I kind of interviewed. So, you know, I've always loved Grand Rapids. It was that kind of that smaller. It was kind of like an Albany to me, a smaller town, but they loved arena football. Every time we went up there, it was a great place to play. So I was always intrigued about coaching up there. I thought it'd be great. So that's kind of what I said. I said, "Hey, I've kind of done this twice. You know, if I'm a serious candidate, let's do it. But, you know, just let me know." And I went up there and again, we had a good conversation, and I got the job. And again, I've liked a lot, obviously, you know, through this conversation, I've liked a lot of the places I've been, but I definitely liked Grand Rapids also.
This year, I think it's funny. It's your first year there, and for at least for some of the season, you have the quarterback, which basically has the same last name, James McPherson and Adrian McPherson.
Right.
How do you think this team did that year? I mean, obviously the team itself, I mean, it ended up being 6-10.
Right.
You know, the rivalries are rampant when it comes to Grand Rapids. Everybody remembers the Chicago games with Grand Rapids in it, and
right.
It's, you know, it made I think it helped the city itself, considering, as you said, it was like an Albany. But what were your thoughts on your head coaching stint at Grand Rapids?
Well, I tell you what, we Ron Selesky came on, and you know, it kind of had a reputation in the league of finding good players. So he came on and coached with me and found a lot of good players, and we made a lot of changes. So going, you know, Adrian was our quarterback coming back, and then I knew James just because he was our backup under Chris Greisen down in Georgia. And I really liked James, just his knowledge of the game, and just, you know, so I said, "Hey, let's get James up here too." And, you know, Adrian did a good job. I just, you know, I ended up making a switch after, I think, 3 games, and I was kind of going, "Man, do I do this? Do I not do this?" And I think it was not so much Adrian, you know, his performance, but I just really knew what James could do and what he knew. So, and then we went to Kansas City and we scored 90 or something. So I thought we were okay. I think we're okay. But it was a challenging year because we changed our whole team from the beginning to the end. We made so many changes, and as we were going, I kept telling the coaches, and we'd all, you know, we're getting better. I mean, we're getting where we want to be. We're getting guys in the spots we want them to get to. A guy like Cole Magner didn't even play the first 6 games, so I don't know what I was doing not playing him. And Cole came on, and Chris Johnson. We got a lot of new guys, Rock Haste, and we just had a good team near the end, and then we just went on a roll. I think we had to win our last 3 to get in, and we won our last 3.
Yep.
It was one of those years where I think coaches and teams say it all the time. Hey, you know, you always want to be good at the end of the season. I think we all kind of say that, but this year it really happened. I mean, we got good at the end of the season. And then we had our playoff game down in Arizona. We had to go on the road and beat them in a great game, and had a goal line stand there at the end to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
And then our playoff game against Chicago was probably one of the highlights of coaching, just because that team was loaded, playing in Chicago. I don't think any of their guys thought they were going to lose that game, and it just turned out to be a great game, and it was a huge upset for us, and we probably played our best game of the year that day. So it was just and again, I think we had to get right back into playing and go back out. We had, I think, 5 road games to finish. We had 2 road games and then 2 road playoff games. So and then we had to go out to San Jose. And again, I think it was close in the first half, and then we just kind of ran out of gas a little bit. But it was was a great experience. I would have loved to stay in Grand Rapids for a long time.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, last 5 games, you had a 5-game winning streak, as you said. After that, the last 2 and then the first 2 of the playoffs that you won were on the road. So, yeah. Is that tough as a head coach where you basically, I mean, you weren't the Houston Thunderbird Nomads, but you were on the road for 5 straight games. How were you able to keep the team as tight-knit? Did you take some of that from 2001?
I think a little bit. I think the other thing too is we were on an upswing. Like I said, so we had made a lot of changes. We knew we were playing better, and we knew, man, if we can just get a win here and get it going here, this is a good team. So I think that had a lot to do with it. As a coach, you can always say you did this, you did that. I'm not sure exactly what we did. We had a great coaching staff that was, pretty upbeat all the time with Selesky and Darren Kinney and Paul Rank. I had a lot of good guys that were always kind of upbeat, which made it easier. But yeah, we kind of formed that us against the world mentality. And a lot of teams do that, but it worked for us. It was, hey, no one wants us to win. It's us. We're going to have no fans. It's us against, 12,000 people. And that's the mentality we took. And it, like I said, we were playing well. And then kind of with that mentality, it kind of worked for us that year.
Obviously, the huge bomb dropped at Arena Bowl, where it was announced that Commissioner Baker was stepping down. And then also the whole league not coming back, et cetera, et cetera. Was it something that you had seen coming, Coach, or was it as big a surprise to you as it was to everybody else?
I think it was still a surprise to me. I mean, I think we knew, we knew there was a lot of issues, say money issues, problems, whatever they may be with the team. I think I knew there was a lot of teams that wanted to go one way, a lot of teams that wanted to kind of go another way. So we knew there was a lot of issues going on. I think in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking back to, 1999, like, hey, we'll get it straightened out. Mm-hmm. Even though there's a lot of stuff going on here, we'll still get this thing straightened out and play. And then it just, kind of hit quick and it was over. So that one was tough just because, like I said, we all loved being in Grand Rapids. They treated us great.
Yeah.
And we were ready to come back and have a great year. I think we had already done a lot of our signings for the next year, and we had, most of the team coming back. So we were excited getting ready for the next year. And I think I did a tryout the day before.
Oh, boy.
So I think I did an open tryout. And then the next day we got the news. So, it was kind of tough. So,
in your opinion, Coach, and I don't know if you're a union guy or not, so I'm just asking in general, but obviously at the time there were contracts where some players were making upwards of 6 figures a season. In your opinion, what do you think was the cause? Was it a combination of the 6 figures, and I think it was like a $3 million salary cap at that time, or was it an ownership thing? Was it a cause of the Players Association? In your opinion, what do you think was the cause of the league folding in 2008?
I'm not exactly, I'm not trying to take the easy way out here. I knew I think it was a combination, definitely. The salaries were probably getting a little bit too high to handle, that type of, money that was coming in. I know the owners, quite a few of the owners, there weren't that many teams that made much money. Mm-hmm. So there was definitely money situations. And it's hard, I don't blame players. They were getting what they could get. I really, I think it was just a lot of issues that came to a head, where there just was, a little bit too much money and too many teams were not making money at that time. And I think everyone kind of knew the structure had to change. I just don't think everyone could agree on the exact way to make that change.
Okay. The Arena Football Hall of Fame has returned, and we want you to become a part of the family. Introducing the Arena Football Hall of Fame Patreon. Whether an All-Star or a Hall of Famer, our reasonably priced tiers each have their own exclusive perks. Early access to the AFL Rewind podcast, honorary selection committee member, and much more. Help us build a Hall of Fame we'll all be proud of. Head to patreon.com/AF Hall of Fame to join. At that point, did you ever think that you were going to be coaching in arena football again?
I wasn't sure. I really didn't know where I was going to go at that time. And like I said, Grand Rapids treated us pretty well. I think they kept most of our staff on, and paying us a little bit longer than maybe some of the other teams did. And, but then we were all unemployed there for a while. So I started looking into, I was looking into college jobs, high school jobs. I was starting to look everywhere, looking back to basketball jobs, because I really didn't know, if it was ever going to come back. So that whole kind of summer and fall, I was looking to see what else I could do.
Did you actually hear when Commissioner Kurz was going to make the announcement that the league was coming back?
I don't remember exactly, when it happened, or I just remember the league coming back, and then, but then I do remember that certain teams weren't going to play and certain teams were going to play. They didn't like, some teams didn't like the model, some teams did like the model. So, at that time I was, Grand Rapids, I think, was on, I'm not saying right or wrong or anything. They were just on the other side that didn't think they were going to play with that new model. And so then I started wondering, okay, so once I found that out, then I think I called Jerry or called the league just saying, hey, I don't know what's going on, but, let me know if any teams are looking for coaches or have interest or that type of thing.
From what you saw with the changeover, because as I said, you've been in the league since the days where players were not getting paid that much, and now this was very similar to, was going to be similar to what the AF2 model was, which was very similar to what the original AFL was like. When you came back and you came in for the Cleveland job, did you think it was going to hinder you in any way in being able to get players to come and play for you, being that the pay scale was so low?
Right. Not really. And the reason I say this is I've said this for 30 years. I think, I think I could start in a football league tomorrow and, call it the Steve Thonn Football League. And there's plenty of football players out there. Yeah. And it's not, I don't mean it that way. I just mean it that there's so many all you have is the NFL basically. So there are so many good football players that have played D1, D2, D3 that are out there not playing. So even if the money goes away, you think all those years back with the AF2, we were scouting that AF2 when we were AF1 like crazy because we knew how many great players were in that AF2 that we all wanted to get on our team. So I didn't think there'd be a problem, knowing the money was going, obviously wasn't going to be nowhere near what it was in 2008, but I didn't think there'd be you're going to get some guys that have just said, hey, I'm not going to keep playing. I've done enough. But I also knew that there'd be plenty of guys that wanted to keep playing football, and there'd be plenty of new players that wanted to start playing arena football. So it wasn't really a big worry going into it that the league wasn't going to have quality players.
Right.
Maybe not quite as good as 2008, obviously, but there was going to be a lot of very, very good players still playing.
How quickly did you get the call from Jerry to say, or from Cleveland to say, do you want to be our head coach?
We were really late. I got a call from Bernie Kosar, and I went out and met with Bernie in December of 2009.
Whoa. Okay.
And so we were, Bernie, I love the guy. He's one of the greatest guys I've ever met. And we had great conversations, and I didn't know which way they were going. And then I got a call, I think 5 days later or something like that. And he said, hey, I want you to be the head coach. So So we were late getting going. Again, I called Ron Selesky just because personnel-wise and coaching-wise, and we put our team together in January and February. So we had 2 months to basically sign, 30-some guys to bring to training camp.
Right.
So we had to do it. We had to do it pretty quick before we started up there in March.
And you did have a pretty good quarterback. I mean, were you lucky to be able to get John Dutton that year?
Well, we did, and I hadn't, I hadn't even thought about John. I was going after, I wanted James to keep playing. So, I was trying to get James to play, and he had kind of gone and decided to go another route. And then I'm trying to think of his name right now. I'm drawing a blank now. He's the head coach at Akron. But he was our backup for James.
Okay.
And he's an Ohio kid, so I'm going, oh, this is great. If we can't get James, I'm sure we can get him. And he had already gotten into his college coaching career, so he didn't want to play. So then John Dutton called us out of the blue, and he just said, hey, I'm interested in playing. And I remember Ron calling me he goes, well, here, let me hang up on you. I want to call Steve. So so he called out and said, you're not going to believe this, but Dutton wants to play. And, so I said, yeah. I said, sign him immediately. Let's go. And then we got Ben Nelson. And I had Chris Johnson and Brent Holmes were 2 receivers I had knew before that. So we put a pretty good team together pretty quick. And then Ron just found, a lot of guys that wanted to play, and we brought them to training camp. So.
Yeah. Did you find it? Now, obviously, you've gone through those smaller cities. Did you find it? It was almost like an old hat being able to play in these smaller cities, like you did this year. I mean, you're going to a Tulsa, you're going to Spokane. We even though they're a lot like Albany and as Grand Rapids, it's just monster fans there. How was your first reaction to these newer cities that you'd never gone to before?
It's like you said, it was I love going there. And it did remind you of the Albanys and that type of thing in the original arena football, kind of cities and the excitement. And they had the advantage on us. We were one of the only teams that year that had to put a team together. Everyone else already had their team.
Yeah.
Because they either came from AF2 or they came from AF1, and they already had their teams. So, everyone thought, hey, you can go play an Arena 2 team. Well, no, these Arena 2 teams are not only are they good, they're well coached, and these guys know what they're doing, and they have great fan support. So it was tough just going into those cities just because those were very good Arena 2 teams and cities where the fans loved it. So it was tough to play.
Yeah. I think when everybody looks at your career, head coaching career, they'll look at Cleveland because considering I think it's where you had the most of your head coaching success. You did well in 2010. I mean, you went 7-9, 10-8 in 2011. 2012 was an interesting season, which I want to ask you about. It seems that, you being in the league for such as long as you had, you always seem to be coming up against either an issue when it came to the league folding or it came up to something to do with a collective bargaining agreement. 2012 was a very interesting season. What was it like that year having to go up against, first of all, the threat at the beginning of the season that there may not be a season because there was no CBA, and then what you had to end up going through in June in Pittsburgh, where
right.
A win for you guys, in my opinion, I've gone back on record to say this, I think that forfeit cost you a playoff spot.
Yeah. And again, I've kind of used this word a lot here. It was a tough season, but it was different. Everything was on hold a little bit at the beginning when we were signing players just because of the uncertainty. I think we had a lot of players kind of on hold, waiting, should we sign them? Should we not sign him? Or, when's the league going to let us sign? All that kind of stuff at the beginning. And it was a change for us because we didn't know. Kurt Rocco took over for John, got hurt in 2011, and Kurt took over in 2012.
Yeah.
And Kurt had a good year, and we knew he was kind of an up and coming quarterback. So we didn't, and then John said he wanted to come back in 2012. So it was kind of a tough situation on that. Like, which way should we go with this? So going into that year, there was just I remember a lot of, harder decisions that we had to make. Was, some other people not playing. We had to bring in some new people that we had the first 2 years. So, again, that was different. And then once we got into it, we realized, obviously, with the union and everything else, everything had changed quite a bit. I think the first game, was it Pittsburgh and Orlando? Or
yeah, it was. Yeah, what people have been dubbing the Olive Garden game.
Yeah, the Olive Garden game. So we were on the road, so we were down, I think, in Georgia. There was so much uncertainty at the beginning of the year on, are we even going to play these games and that type of thing. And then we did get going, and we had a pretty good team again. And what I didn't know, which, was hard for me, what I didn't know is we were obviously a pretty big union team, not that other teams weren't,
right,
but we had some guys that were very into it, again, not right or wrong, but guys who were into it, very kind of vocal, talked with the union guys a lot. So as it was going on, you can kind of tell that, something might be happening here with our team.
right.
Just kind of with the feel of it. And like you said, the game that and I totally agree with you. I think if we would have won that game, because we had to forfeit that game, that, we didn't make the playoffs that year. Because it really put our team, it divided our team so much too after that. Because we had we had 9 or 10 guys show up wanting to play that night, but, we couldn't even field enough players, to play. So, the next 2 weeks you're doing damage control, just trying to get everyone back on the same page because there was so much division. So it was tough. It was a hard year. I wasn't expecting it. I knew something was up. We all stayed at a, extended stay. So right when I was getting ready to go to the arena, the union guys and all my guys were in a big room at the extended stay. So I knew something was going on. I did not think we were not going to play that night. But I knew something was happening just because we were, like I said, a lot of our guys were pretty big in the union. So, and then I went down to the arena in Cleveland, and when I got down there, that's when I realized, that's when I was told when I got there that our guys weren't going to play. Like I said, about 7 or 8 guys showed up wanting to play, but they had already made the decision.
Was the commissioner there to deal with the situation? Obviously, the Players Association was their executive was there, but how were you able to? What's one thing that you remember specifically about that night?
Yeah, I don't think he was there. I'm trying to think who was there at our game that night. I don't know if anybody was there because I know there was a lot of communication going back and forth on the phones about what's going to be done and what's not going to be done, and
right,
this and that. And we were literally trying to call all our players and get them to come down to the arena. And they just, we just couldn't get enough guys to form a team that night.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't think maybe Joe was there, Kleinsmith from the league. I'm not sure if Joe was there that night, but yeah, it was just it was an awful situation, and I had to stay there and be there. Their team actually had to come out and do warm-ups and be on the field. So Pittsburgh actually came out on the field. which was tough just to see those guys out there. So
Yeah, for sure.
wasn't a good situation.
No. In 2013, you ended up going 4-14. I mean, anything in particular that really stands out for you about that 2013 season on why only 4 wins?
Yeah, we just, again, I think we made a lot of changes. We, quarterback-wise, Chris Deeker kind of took over for us that year, and we started playing Chris a lot. So it was, quarterback with not a lot of experience, but Chris did a good job, showed some promise that, he could be a good quarterback. And, again, I think we had some real close games that year. I'm not quite sure, but it was, it was one of those years that was just more of it was a disappointing year. No excuses, that type of thing. It was just, not where we wanted to be that year. So I don't know if it was some from the year before or not. But it definitely, a lot of guys had left us that were there. So again, it was kind of more of a new team that year.
Right.
And, we just weren't as good.
2014. What a turnaround. 17-1 on the season. You guys, I think a lot of it, I remember a lot from that season. I think you guys were nicknamed the Cardiac Kids by how many, how you guys won some of your games. I think there was the off the net for a win in Spokane. There was, there were quite a few. The thing at Philadelphia, that last second win at Philly. Tell me about that season, Coach. I mean, it's one of the most dominant teams in Arena Football League history to go 17-1.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the Arena Ball afterwards. But tell us about this team, because I think anybody who knows the league as well as I do remembers how good this team actually was.
Right. Hands down, the best season I've ever had coaching in my life. Mm-hmm. As fun as that Grand Rapids was at the end, we did that for 18 weeks. It was just that every single game, we won 6 games that year. Well, let's go back a little bit. We had going into that year, I wasn't even sure if I was coming back. I was still kind of waiting on my contract, so I was kind of waiting. Man, I might be replaced here. I think they were looking at other coaches, so I didn't even get a contract till February, I think. And we knew we had signed a lot of good players. So we knew, hey, 13 was bad, but we signed a lot of good players. It's be different. I think we knew it was going to be a little bit different. Philly came to our place for a scrimmage, and we had got a brand new practice facility, unbelievable facility. Mm-hmm. So everything was changing in 14. We went from not a real nice soccer place to this beautiful facility. There's no other way to explain it. And so we had that. Philly comes for a scrimmage, and, for 3 years, Philly kind of took it to us. And even though it was a scrimmage, for the first time, I felt like we got the best of Philly. And like I said, there's no trophies for winning a scrimmage, but it was one of those things where our guys kind of didn't back down.
Right.
It's just one of those good things you came out of the scrimmage going, I feel pretty good about. Then we go to Pittsburgh for the first game. And, I know a lot of people have said it, but I think our assistant coach said it. Hey, we kind of started the 1-0 mantra that year. Hey, let's just win one game and not worry about anything else. And they had Tommy Grady. They had a good team, and we played a good game. Our defense played well. Chris Deeker at quarterback played well. He ran for like 4 touchdowns, just gritty, tough runs. So anyways, that's a great way to start the year. Then we go down to New Orleans, and we can't do anything right.
Right.
We can't score. We can't get a first down. And then so I decided to make a change at halftime with Shane, put Shane in, and Shane led us like 5 possessions, 5 touchdowns, and we won the game. So now, I created kind of I got another problem here just because, but Shane had a great training camp, and we all knew Shane had a great training camp. I mean, he was on If we probably charted, he might have had a better training camp than Chris, but Chris was the guy coming back and wanted to be loyal to him, that type of thing. So next game I made Chris the starter again, and we didn't play real good at the beginning, so I put Shane in, and we won that game. I think it was Iowa maybe. But so then that kind of started us. But that's how we got started, and then everything we won 6 games on the last play, which is unheard of.
I know.
I mean, like you said, we threw it off the net in Spokane. And we do practice it quite a bit because the ball always comes off to the right if you throw it right. So we told, hey, you guys go there, and one receiver go to the right, and T-Lou went to the right, and it kind of came off at an angle. But again, even though we talk about it, doesn't mean it's going to happen. But so the guys went nuts. We went in Spokane, then we won 3 games on field goals. Philly had us down by 17 with 52 seconds to go, and we scored 3. We scored, got the onside kick, scored, got the next onside kick, and went down and scored on the last play and beat them. Then we beat Philly on a Hail Mary. So it was just, it was one of those years that, and then when you're winning, you're having so much fun.
Yeah.
You can't do anything wrong. Practices were fun. Everything was fun. But I give the guys credit. I mean, they did, they were never really satisfied. I think the biggest thing is, I tell people it's probably one of the greatest sports seasons ever. And the only reason I say that is that, we were picked to finish close to last that year in the Arena League. It's not like we were, I don't know how many teams there were, 14, 16. I don't even know how many there were in 14, but we were probably picked in the bottom 3. So to go from the bottom 3 preseason pick to going 17-1 is pretty amazing. So it was just an unbelievable year. And then the playoffs, beating Philly on the field goal, and then Orlando coming, and that was just a kind of tough, mean, kind of nasty game, and we pulled that one out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, it was great all the way till that last game, which you probably want to talk about now.
I want to ask you one thing, though. With you guys, you started off 9-0, and then you lost at Pittsburgh. As a head coach, obviously, you I said, the 1-0 mantra, but I'm sure you would have wanted to have had the perfect season, but do you think losing at that time was the right time for your team to lose? So you had enough games to correct everything that may have occurred and to finish the rest of the season? Because, it was basically right at mid-season where you lost at Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's never, you never want to lose a game, but it was we made some bad mistakes that night. They played pretty well, and it was just one of those games where, it kind of brought us back down to earth. And I think that's what we all talked about in the locker room right away.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, it doesn't matter if we're 9-0, if we don't play together, we don't play the way we're supposed to, we're not that good. We kind of kept the 1-0 mantra. We said, and I told the guys, I remember in the locker room, I said, hey, if we're going 1-0 on wins, then let's just go 1-0 next week and not worry about this week. So we kind of tried to keep that same thing, like, okay, we blew it tonight, but let's get right back on track here.
Yeah.
And again, it's easy to say those things, but I think our guys did. Our guys did a real good job, I think, in believing in that, and we had some good leaders and stuff like that. That kind of we did practice hard. I mean, as much fun as we had, I remember that group always coming to practice and practicing pretty hard.
And the fans were behind you quite a bit. I mean, was that the year that the yes, yes, yes chant started? I can't remember if that was the year.
Yeah.
So
and our O-line kind of got into it with the yes, 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 and our fans got into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think after that Philly game when we scored 3 times in 50 seconds or whatever, but the yes, yes, yes was that was pretty big. So.
First time that you've gone to an Arena Bowl as a head coach, what were you trying to tell your team going into this game? I mean, obviously Arizona was a juggernaut in the league this year. But you guys were there. I mean, you were 17-1. You were hosting the Arena Bowl. What do you remember trying to tell your team about this game itself?
I think the biggest thing that hurt us was having to take a week off.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks to the Arena Bowl. I think it was one of those years where we needed to keep playing.
Yeah.
Having 2 weeks was not going to help us any prepare anymore, that type of thing. So I think that having 2 weeks to get kind of ready did not help our team at all. I think we had 4 or 5 guys, and we, back then with the rules, you technically, don't pay guys that week.
Right.
So we had a hard time keeping our guys in town because technically with the rules the way they were, we couldn't. I had 5 guys go home and start jobs. So here we are winning the semifinal game against Orlando, and I have a meeting, on Monday or whatever, Sunday, I can't remember exactly what day it was. And, I got 5 guys leaving that 4 of them, I think, went and started coaching jobs, and another guy had to start another teaching job or whatever. And I think I had a couple other guys that left just to go do some work. So it really hurt us because, you can say all you want, hey, that's fine. Make sure you guys work out, be ready to go. See y'all next Sunday when you come back. But I think that really hurt our team not being able to just keep playing.
Yeah.
And again, I'll get to that. I'm not going to make excuses, but that definitely did not help us. And then when we got back, I think a lot of their focus wasn't there. The 1-0, everything just wasn't there as much, just because we weren't together for a week,
right,
where we had already been together for so many weeks. And then we got back and we had a couple decent practices, and then, Arizona comes down, and then we have all the banquets and the TV stuff, and so we never really. I think if I had to do it over again, I would have been a little harder on it. But, it's not my mentality, and it's just not the way I am. And everything had gone so good over the year, so why change anything now?
Right.
But I think if I had to do it over again, I probably would have, had all of us just get, make it tougher, practices a little tougher and harder, just so we got back into it more. And got maybe a little bit more uncomfortable where we had to fight through some stuff. So that's that part of it going into that game that I think that hurt us, and I would have changed it a little bit.
What were you telling your team at halftime? I mean, Arizona just dropped 30 on you, which is in arena football, that to drop 30 in one quarter is extremely rare. What were you telling your team at halftime? I mean, yes, there's still a half to go. Yes, you're down, but as we've seen in arena football, anything can happen.
Right. Nothing went right for us. I mean, they came down, they scored. I think we went down. We had 2 chances to score. I think Goody was open and we missed him, and Tilu. We had 2 chances to score early in the game to keep it close, and we missed both opportunities. Mm-hmm. And then we threw that interception after we missed the opportunity, and it got out of hand so quick there in the first half that, we were down so much and nothing had gone right. And at that time, we're all mad. We're all kind of in shock a little bit that, this is going on. So in the locker room, the only thing I said, I think we got the ball coming out, and I said, guys, there's no other way to look at this than we can't don't think about the first half. Don't think about anything but the first possession out here. I said, it is arena football. It's like you were just saying, Tim, it is arena football. Things can change in a second. We've had games where we've scored 21 points in a quarter or 28 points in a quarter. Everything can change real quick. But let's come out here, let's score. And if we can get a couple breaks, then I said, we just got to build on it and don't let up. And it just didn't happen. I don't think we scored when we came out, and then it got out of hand again, and it was over. The game to me was frustrating because it was such a blur. And as a coach, it's like I told you, you look back on, I should have called this. I didn't sleep that night. I don't think I even fell asleep till the next night. So just thinking about every single thing that happened in the game, and then I went and watched film right away just to watch the film. And it's just one of those things where, you look back on it, they played great. They were a good team. They deserved to win, all that stuff. Would I have changed some things going into it? Yeah. Would it have made a difference? Yeah, I think it would have made a difference. I think we could have played a lot better game. Would we have beaten them? I don't know. They played so well that night, but it was frustrating. So,
have you at all since then gone back, and I think that game is on YouTube also, have you actually gone back to watch the game, or is it one of those games where you don't ever want to watch it again? Not like the showcase game where you had a reason to watch it again, but
right.
Have you ever watched this game again?
I watched it again a couple years later. I watched it, like I said, I watched it right away the next day, and then tried to forget about it, which was really tough just because, it was such a beating that you can't, you can't really explain it. So,
yeah.
So I went back, watched it, and it was kind of the same thing. I realized there was a couple spots we could have kept it close. And I think if we could have kept it close, it's like any sport, the game would have been a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But, who knows? They, like I said, they beat us, pretty good. So, I don't want to take anything away from them.
Right.
But definitely we could have and should have played a better game. So.
Well, let's end the year on a happy note here. Your main coaching squad swept the awards that year. Obviously, Coach Selesky got the Assistant Coach of the Year, and you yourself won what is now called the Markham Moss Head Coach of the Year award. Obviously, you had the game in mind when as I said, even though they are doing the awards ceremony, but is that something that you were able to cherish when you were officially announced as the Head Coach of the Year?
Yeah, it really was. And was it the night before we had the banquet,
mm-hmm.
The night before the game. And it's like I said, I've told people this, I think no matter what the sport, Head Coach of the Year is the biggest team award disguised as an individual award there is. It really is. We had a great year, and, I get credit for Coach of the Year and that type of thing, but, the coaches I had were great that year. The players were great. It's the whole thing. The organization was great to us. So, like I said, it's great to have it. And I played for Perry Moss.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I got into the league, and Perry was great. Scared me to death. I thought he was going to cut me all the time, but I loved him. And Markham obviously was, arguably the best coach ever in Arena. So, kind of knowing that those two guys, the name of the award is after those two.
Yeah.
Is pretty exciting that I was able to get it just knowing who they were. So, so that means something, but again, it's a team award more than an I award. So.
Do you still have what did they give out the year? Plaque, or did they give out a trophy? I don't remember what they gave out that year.
It's kind of a glass kind of plaque.
Yeah. Where do you have that?
It was up like in a den, but since we don't go to our den to get on our computers anymore, I'm not sure where it is right now. Since we just sit at our kitchen table. But yeah, it was pretty cool when we all went to a den, but now, I think it's set back on a shelf. Yeah. So in a room that none of us go to. Yeah. So
what, for 15 and 16, in your opinion, how'd you go from a 17 win team in 2014 to a 8-win team in 2015 and a 7-win team in 2016?
I think it's just that the league is good and there's good coaches and there's good players. Everything went right from it. It's not like we got that bad.
Right.
Like I said, we won 6 games on the last play and won a couple other close games that year. So everything went right for us. I still think we had a pretty good team. Those next years. But things change in Arena. You lose players, you get new players all the time. And I think it was pretty good that we still went to the playoffs each of those years.
Yep.
And again, so we still, it's not like we still had a chance to do well. Philly got us the one year, and Arizona, took it to us again the next year. But it was good. I still think we had good years those years. It was just one of those things where we weren't on fire like we were, back in 14.
Was that probably one of the reasons why you, I guess we could say, left or was let go from the Gladiators at the end of 16?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not exact. I mean, I appreciate, again, I was there for 7 years. So, in coaching, that's pretty good at times. So, I think they wanted to go a new direction, and Ron had been there with me all those years.
Mm-hmm.
So never really a big explanation. We just kind of talked, and they kind of thanked me for everything, and they're moving in a new direction. That was it. So obviously as a coach, I would have liked to keep going.
Yeah.
Just because I thought we were still pretty good. We still went to semifinals, and with all the stuff that's kind of going on in the league with other teams, I thought we're still doing a pretty good job and wanted to keep going, but it just didn't work out.
How'd you end up getting attached with the Washington Valor?
They had actually called me about some players.
Okay.
So they wanted to know, a lot of guys were free agents from the Cleveland team, so they were calling, asking about some guys. So I was talking to them, and then we started talking a little bit more, just about what they're doing with their coaching staff and that type of thing. And Coach Wilkinas wasn't sure, because he was an offense coordinator and head coach. So, wasn't quite sure at that time if he was going to get another coach or do it or whatever, or coach defense, or, wasn't sure. And then it just, a few more conversations, they said they were looking for an offense coordinator. So that's when I went to DC.
Okay. Because I only saw DC as a fan and as a media guy who covered the team. Was the team, because we watched how over the years DC was just not able to score in the third quarter throughout their history, at least up until they won the year after the Arena Bowl. Was this team a good 3-win team that year? I mean, yes, it was an expansion club. I understand that. But why? Why was this team so bad?
I think the biggest thing was, you had, and again, no right or wrong. You just had they brought me in, and I had done things differently, called plays differently. They had done things their way. A lot of the guys that were on their staff. I think we brought in a lot of players that, like an Eric Meyer, who had done obviously things different in San Jose, and there was just I think there was a lot of good players. But I just, the short time that I was there, just, a combination of a little bit of everything. We just hadn't put it together yet.
Right.
And then I know Eric got hurt after I had left. Eric got hurt a little bit after that. And then you're going through quarterback changes. So, I think it was one of those teams where you knew there was a lot of talent there. And once they did get it together, that it could be a pretty good team. And they ended up, getting there the next year. And Arvell did a great job when he came in.
Yeah.
Kind of solidifying the quarterback spot, which is what they needed, at that time. So, but again, I think it was just one of those things with a little bit more time. You kind of knew things were going to get better there.
Did you feel that you were let go from? Because I think everybody remembers this. And in my opinion, it seemed to be as there wasn't much fanfare on you leaving, and it just seemed that this Washington team was doing things just a little bit different than other teams would when it came to promoting their team, good or bad. That makes sense?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it was just for me. It was just a totally. I had been in Cleveland there for 7 years doing. It's not. Doing things my way. I don't mean in a bad sense, but so it was just different for me too. It was different for me to go in there and adapt to a different style. And like I said, with different coaches and different players, and it was just one of those things that just wasn't. It just wasn't working. And you can kind of tell it just wasn't working. So,
right.
But yeah.
Okay. Why, after the 2017 season, why did you decide to call it a career?
Never really decided to call it a career.
Okay.
Didn't really get a call from anybody. I think some people thought I was done. That's what some people told me later, was that hey, word was you're kind of done. I had helped out at a high school here from 2013 on, so I was helping football here, and then 2015 they asked me to help out in basketball,
right.
And I think they just wanted an old guy sitting on the bench, so I said, sure, I'll help out in basketball. They let go of that guy in 2017 and named me the interim coach. So they kind of named me the interim coach right before I went to DC too, right about that time.
Oh.
I was just kind of waiting to see what happened in the arena. And in 2018, I really just didn't get much feedback. I don't know how much I was searching. I was busy doing the football and basketball here and doing summer, but I was all of a sudden, doing a lot of coaching at the high school.
Right.
But I never really looked to leave arena. I mean, once you got arena, it's in your blood.
Oh,
You're a lifer. I mean, fans are the same way, and coaches and players. I mean, it's just that league. It's just, it pulls us in. So, but in 2019, I was talking to more coaches, and I was talking to people in the front office, just saying, hey, if you hear anything, I do want to get back in. And so I started talking with more people in 2019, and then, obviously, nothing happened here with COVID and everything.
Right.
So I'm still looking. I mean, I would love to, if arena came back, I would always love to get back in it and coach again. I just think it's the greatest sport around. I mean, I always have said that, and I think it's exciting. It's football. I think it's better football for 30 years than if you weren't involved, you didn't know how good it was.
Right.
But I would love to get back in it. I've looked into the other, indoor leagues a little bit. And I know the NAL plays more of the arena game. So that would be, kind of intriguing that way, but I would love to get back in. And hopefully, I'm not sure where the league is, or I really haven't kept that close a contact, but, if it got started again, I would definitely like to get back in.
In your opinion, Coach, because obviously with the league folding in 2019, there were different reasons why it occurred. Even though that I think that it was probably one of the better head offices that we've had in a while. We had a commissioner who would seem to be very open and transparent. In your opinion, when you heard that the league had folded, which could possibly be for the very last time, in your opinion, what do you think was the cause this time around that the league folded?
I'm really not sure, just because I was kind of disconnected at that time.
Right.
And I wasn't talking, to that many people. I obviously there's coaches I keep talking to quite a bit, and just because, we've known each other for so long. And, but I really can't give you an opinion, just because I wasn't that close to the situation. So I'm not sure. I really don't know exactly why the league folded this time, but and I've heard a lot of rumors on that it could come back, or who owns more of the league, or what was sold, or I've heard a lot of rumors, but I don't even know about that for sure. So I would just love for the league to come back again. I mean, it's come back so many times, and it's the greatest. Like I said, it fits. It still fits. And it's needed out there, the AFL. So it fits a time schedule in the year that, football is needed, and it's such a great game. It's hard to believe that. And again, I know there's other indoor leagues, but arena football needs to be one of them.
Before we finish up, I want to ask you hopefully some fun questions about yourself and your history in the AFL. Coach, if you were able to tell us one player that really stands out to you the most that you have coached throughout your career, who would it be and why?
Oh, jeez. Putting me on the spot. Probably Clint.
Yeah.
Just because I think Clint kind of grew up in the early stages of the game when it was changing, and became such a good quarterback and a good coach, obviously. But just the way he played the game and how we, Clint and I kind of learned, I was an OC, he was a starting quarterback. So we kind of learned a lot of stuff together. And I had no problem if he came over and said, I want to run this play. I said, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. So we kind of did a lot of stuff together, and just how much he, how much he grew in the game, the competitor he was. Like I said, he didn't want to lose anything. I used to quit practice early in Houston because we had a tea time every Thursday, and it was Mike Hold, who was our backup quarterback, and Mike was a real good golfer, like high 70s. You had Clint, who was high 70s, and then you had Gary Gussman, who was coaching with me, and me, who were both around the same. If we were shooting good, we were low. So we'd go out every Thursday, and it was me and Clint against the other two. But we had the best rounds of golf ever, just because all those guys wanted to compete so much. So, but yeah, probably Clint, just to come up with one right off the bat.
Worst city to go to as an opponent?
The worst city or the hardest place to play?
Whichever you want to use.
Trying to think. Orlando back in the day was always tough to play. Just because, it was so loud in there, and, they were good. So it was always, Orlando was really tough there in the 90s to play. Iowa was tough to play at back in the heyday, just because their fans were so crazy, and you'd have a kid and a mom yelling at you just as much as a dad, and hitting you with corn stalks, and that was a tough place to play.
The old barn.
I love playing in those places. We had a blast. We had some great games, but they were from a city. Those were really tough places to play. And there were other ones too, but those were just because of the way they were set up made it tough.
I was going to say your favorite city, but I will say the one of all the teams that you were with, the best fans.
The best fans.
Yeah.
Wow, that's tough. I really got to like our Cleveland fans just because I was there for so long and I got to know them. And there was such a diehard group that loved arena football that I really didn't know the first couple of years. And the more I was there, I got to know them so well. So, I loved those Cleveland fans because of that.
Yeah.
I think the Grand Rapids fans, they just had a huge, the whole, it was kind of like an Albany. Everyone came, and it was a smaller community. So you just felt like you were more of you felt like you were more of with all 8,000 of them.
Right.
They're all kind of with you. So, so the two places that now I'm sure, the other fans, but where I've been, I'd say those two, and obviously Albany, but I was kind of there at the beginning of Albany, and I know they were still great fans, but they even got better as it went along.
If somebody comes up to you in 5 years, coach, let's say you're not coaching in the AFL anymore or coaching football in any way, and somebody asks you about the Arena Football League, and we'll say at that point it has not come back, how would you explain the AFL to this fan?
I would say the AFL is probably the most exciting. It's the most exciting football that you would ever see. If I'd explain it to somebody, I never really heard anybody over the 30 years go to an arena football game and go, "Oh, that was terrible." They like it. You go to an arena game, and especially a good one where there's a lot of fans and everyone's into it. I've had so many of my friends and people I know that over the years have gone to a game and go, "Wow, I never knew that was like that. That was unbelievable." So it's just, and I think people don't know how good the football was. It was, the rules were different and they're set up different. So the game is obviously a lot different than the outdoor game. But you don't realize how good all these players were that have come through here. I mean, all these guys that were in the NFL and NFL camps and colleges and small colleges. And, I tell people this, that there was a lot of talent. I mean, I remember coaching and, we had guys come from NFL camps and we had guys come from playing in the NFL and I cut them. Mm-hmm. So that's how good the talent was, in the Arena Football League. And that really goes back to the beginning too. When you had a lot of good players all the way back there. So those things, just that it's probably one of the greatest games. Obviously I loved it and I still do. And, just a lot of good players have gone through it.
We'd like to thank Coach Thonn for joining us on this episode of AFL Rewind. What a way to look back at, as I said at the beginning of the show, what many consider the grail of all grail games in AFL history. To be able to see how he got involved in the AFL and how his career really took off and how he made a name for himself in the AFL. If there are any comments, questions, concerns for future episodes, or if you want to let us know who you'd like to have on a future episode, you can email us over at aflrewind@arenafan.com. And also, if you happen to miss any of these episodes, there are many ways where you can go back and get caught up. If you head over to SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and our audio version over on YouTube. We do thank you for joining us for this episode. And as always, especially during this strange time, there have been some positive things to come out, but we want to make sure that you do stay safe and stay healthy. So for everybody here at AFL Rewind, I'm Tim Capper. Watch the rebound off the net.